Why don't we, we've got great guests. Why don't we just go around and just get everybody's opinion of what they've seen the first couple of nights of the RNC. And Willie, I'm curious, do you think, because at the beginning of the week, you have these polls, Biden's up by 10 in the national polls. In most of the swing states, maybe it's 3, 4, 5, 6 points. That seems to be the range. It's tight. It's going to tighten even more. But there's no doubt he needs to pick up voters through this convention. Have you seen themes that you think will help him do that?
Well, last night he tried. I don't think he even tried on the first night. As I said, if that speech last night or the speeches you saw on Monday night seemed foreign to viewers of this network, they were very familiar to his base. If you're a Fox News viewer, you're on Facebook a lot, or you listen to a lot of talk radio, what Kimberly Guilfoyle said or what Donald Trump Jr. said in his speech, that was the message for the base. So that was not a foreign argument. That made sense. To your question, what about everyone else? What about those voters in the suburbs? And I think there was an attempt last night to try to humanize the president in some way for suburban women, for people of color. But John Heilemann, as we go through, there's no denying that the underlying theme here is that the president is not responsible for this coronavirus pandemic. In fact, they're painting him as a hero who rode in to stop it. That, of course, defies everything we have in front of us, all the evidence that we see as we approach now 180,000 dead. This is the story at the center of people's lives, not just as a public health crisis, but as an economic crisis, as 30 million people have lost their jobs over the last 6 months. That has been brushed to the side. Last night, Larry Kudlow talked about it in the past tense. Melania Trump, the First Lady, did express some sympathy for people who have lost loved ones, who've lost a job. But that's about the size of it, other than saying Donald Trump, if not for him, it would have been much worse.
Right. Yeah, Willie, good morning. And when Melania Trump made the comment that she made in her speech last night, it was the first time in 5 hours of programming that any speaker at the Republican National Convention had expressed any sympathy for those who had lost lives or lost jobs because of coronavirus. And that just gives you a sense of how disconnected this event has been from the overriding realities that that have been defining our existence for the past 5 months, which have been the virus, the economic fallout from the virus, and also these issues related to police brutality and racial justice. And it's an alternative universe that we've been living in for these last couple of days. But I think you're right that yesterday you could see some very ham-handed attempts to do some very basic work. These everything is in primary colors with this party, but the big challenges they have, they need to inspire a bunch of, not just inspire their base, but also to drive out people who would have been part of the Trump base in 2016 but didn't vote, and so white non-college voters in battleground states. So there's all that red meat that they're throwing, and then the contradictory impulse, which is to try to solve this problem that that Donald Trump has with upscale suburban moderate voters, women particularly. Those two strategic objectives are at odds, and so you have this not only an alternative universe, but a schizophrenic kind of convention that you're seeing play out. And then finally, the other big challenge, right, which is, they must make this election a choice and disqualify Joe Biden. If this race is a referendum on Donald Trump, he's going to lose this race. And I think everyone in Donald Trump's team understands that. I think that certainly that's the view of most political analysts who've seen this thing playing out. And yet everything about this convention is about Donald Trump. It makes him, it doesn't make it, it's not serving the purpose of trying to make this election a choice and make it about Joe Biden. It's making it all about Donald Trump. And so the spectacle of 2 days of political self-pleasuring that we've seen on Donald Trump's part, everything being about him being omnipresent and pervasive, seems to fight the kind of fundamental strategic objective of what this convention should be about. I could go on. Claire McCaskill is going to say some things about the use of the People's House. I heard her passionately last night, so I'm not going to make the points that I would make there about how gross it was to see them using the White House and other pieces of official process and places to do their political work. But that was another thing that really stood out last night and was really one of the things that was unprecedented in every convention I've ever covered, and I think in the history of the country.
Yeah. And we'll get to Claire in one moment. I want to go to Noah first, though. Noah, you and I are two people who spent our lives, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I think we're two people that have spent our lives voting for Republican presidential candidates. And it would seem to me that the first thing they would want to do is nail down that base and bring some of those people back. At the same time, obviously, disqualifying Joe Biden. What have you seen so far the first two nights? Do you think that they're accomplishing that goal halfway through this convention?
So this is most certainly Donald Trump's convention. It is all about him, of course. And there's a lot of bombast, and particularly with the creatures that have orbited Donald Trump over the course of his presidency, his family members, people like Kim Guilfoyle, they appeal to a lot of bombast, and it becomes a lot of white noise. But I think, I'm going to disagree with John here, I think that this is a very smartly produced convention insofar as it's doing one job, which is to give a permission structure to the Republican and conservative voters who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 or are skeptical of him and didn't vote at all and abandoned the party entirely in 2018. This is creating a softer image around the Republican Party. There are a lot of establishmentarian themes that appeal to people like me: unconditional patriotism, racial rapprochement, anti-communism. That sort of stuff is staples of the conservative diet. This is not fringe stuff. This is not out there. It is very grounded in a conservative ethos, and not a lot of people are watching this. I would be shocked if anybody remembers a single line from any of these speeches in November, but they will remember a sentiment. They will remember an atmosphere. And to the extent that you're appealing to a narrow band of voters who represent a conservative base, a Republican base, which is probably all that's watching this, it's targeted at them, and I think it's probably a little effective. And I would be surprised if it doesn't give voters who don't think they can cast a ballot for Donald Trump on his character, on his comportment, a reason to vote for Republicans up or down the ballot.
Well, and Claire, that's something that I was thinking about last night, that probably, just my opinion, probably what we're seeing now is going to be washed away fairly quickly after the convention's over, if it's Donald Trump trying to soften his image on immigration, because people are not going to be seeing images over the next 2.5 months of Donald Trump swearing in the 5 people that he wants to actually come to the United States of America. It'll be children in cages. It'll be the father and his young daughter, dead in the water, face down. It'll be babies being ripped from their mother's arms. It'll be stories of the Trump administration, of the cabinet actually sitting around a table and all of them raising their hands, agreeing that the policy of tearing children from mothers' arms, putting children in cages, was actually an effective way to run policy. I know that's an awful lot to throw out there, but that's what Biden's campaign and the Democrats are going to have to put in 30-second ads and on the internet over the next 2.5 months. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.